Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you kindly for stopping by. I'd like to first thank Modibo Shepo for having me on his show. CNBC Africa by Africa is the name of the show, and rightly so. I'm looking forward to being the speaker at MindSpeak on Saturday. This is this Saturday at the Intercontinental Nairobi. If you don't know what it's about, click on the link. MindSpeak YouTube gives you a good idea. It's free to enter. The entry ticket is that you bring your mind. We start serving breakfast at 9:30 a.m. We start our program at 10. I'd like to thank Ramanyang for the interview regarding quantitative easing, the ECB, and the impact of that on Africa. He's published the link for that interview, so if you care to have a look, you're most welcome. My macro thoughts are that just a 25 basis point rate hike from the Fed could prove the maraschino cherry atop Barack Obama's sophisticated 21st century oil and currency warfare. And what do I mean by that? I think it would be really effective at actually tipping a lot of these currencies over the edge. Home thoughts. I'm somewhat allergic to explanations that divide men and women into frozen categories and attribute to each sex its characteristic virtues and shortcomings. Mario Vargas Llosa. Irina Greenvoice tweeted this inspiration photo of the day. I hope you think it was inspirational. I like this from Wild Pics of Life, a house in the sky in Austria. And then Arati Kumar Roy crossing the Bay of Bengal and tweeted this photograph of Bangladesh, which was very arresting. And then probably the sentence I appreciate the most from Vargas Llosa. Memory is a snare, pure and simple. It alters, it subtly rearranges the past to fit the present. Political reflections. I like this photo of Kobani's destruction. Well, I didn't like it, but it was really up close and personal. Kobani after the Kurds drive out IS is the caption. Now, obviously the big event yesterday was the response by Hezbollah, Dorothy of Israel breaking. These are the IDF vehicles hit by Hezbollah earlier. That's Channel 10. I concluded by saying Hezbollah is in fact Israel's only serious adversary. Asymmetric, of course. Lee Smith TWS tweeted this is allegedly today's operation at Sheba Farms. And here is the martyrs of Quneitra Brigade, i.e. Hezbollah. So interesting events. I mean, it was never there was never not going to be a response. It's finally calibrated. It is in a disputed place, and the target was military. RT America, political fashion. Michelle Obama, not veiled, sparks Twitter debate. In Saudi Arabia, she says, they say, I'll put up that photograph. Daoud Sufi retweeted, nameless grave for a billionaire king. Saudi Arabia's austere burial rites. It's a very arresting image when you see it. Vladimir Putin has been speaking quite a bit of late, and he says that of NATO, that they want Russia marginalized, contained, destabilized, weakened, isolated, smothered, and controlled, using Ukraine as a dagger against it, he said. And indeed, that's clearly the end game for the 21st century oil and currency warfare specialist Barack Obama. The Fed raises its assessment of the economy while staying patient on rates. My takeaway is the same takeaway that Jim O'Sullivan reached. He is of high frequency economics in Valhalla, New York. And he said the door is open for the first rate hike in June. I'm inclined to think that the Fed is essentially, and they're pretty dismissive about international events. I know the market sort of looked at that, but I thought, a one sentence about international events really sums it up for me. It's the equivalent of we're simply not interested. Euro 113.14, let's see if we can hold above this. Dollar index 94.66 when I checked last. Japanese yen 117.69. Swissy 0.9097. Pound 151.30. The euro is actually making up ground that people are buying up the euro against sterling. But I think, I suspect the Swiss National Bank is intervening on Euro Swiss. Dollar index, as I said, I'm very bullish about that. Obviously, I think we'll get the odd drawdown, but the direction is headed higher. And I said this in September 2014, when I said the point I'm making is that the dollar has just started getting going. There will be blood in the water. There is a small window if we want to be the sharks. I'll put up the shark in Dubai Mall. The US economy, in my view, is the comeback kid of 2015. I think the Federal Reserve now has stopped printing dollars. I think the Fed is just one headline economic print from raising interest rates. The rate hike, even as small as 0.25%, will be the catalyst for a renewed surge in the dollar. The dollar index is headed a lot higher by the dollar, I said. Euro dollar, my target remains 1. Of course, we're in interesting times. It's a pretty exponential move that we're watching. We're going to get very, very strong rebounds, but I think you sell the rebound. I liked this from Nameless LLC, what the first 15 seconds of Apple looked like today. This was after the results were announced. It gives you a tremendous visual of what happened. Reuters' Jamie is saying Greek bank stocks not liking Syriza's victory. minus 38% on this week, on track for the biggest fall ever. Commodity markets. The Bloomberg Commodity Index slid to a 12-year low this week. Crude, hogs and copper leading losses in 2015. I do not see a near-term bounce in the price of oil. I think it could average $50 a barrel for the next 24 months. I do not think there is a Hail Mary pass coming. Crude oil was last at $44 and around 50 cents, but had a torrid session yesterday, fell very sharply to more than 6-year low. I think we're going to break down through 40, and it could happen relatively quickly. I take you back to something I wrote on the 13th of October when I asked who kneecapped oil. I've followed the oil market for eternity, and the recent price action is best characterized as unprecedented and white-knuckle. In fact, the oil market has always been very high beta and exhibits magnified price reactions to the demand and supply dynamic. Where markets are net short, price setting can be determined by the last buyer who is paying up in a net supply deficit scenario, and that's why you used to see those big price spikes around futures expiring. However, this is a binary thing. In a situation where there is a net surplus, the price setter can be those last sales transacted at deep discount. I was writing this in October, and I said, the conditions, and I will explain them momentarily, are optimal for a complete washout. A blow-off bottom was a more earthy description in my time. Down as far as $50 a barrel. Well, we're well through that now. Markets overshoot. Crude oil does it big time, and any and every model needs to consider such a price outcome. The big game change, I said, has been US crude output, which rose from 5.7 million barrels per day in 2011 to 8.4 million barrels in the second quarter of 2014, a remarkable 47% gain, and it's now topping 9 million at the last count. I said Iran and Saudi Arabia are offering their oil at the deepest discount since 2008. Essentially, the global system is awash in oil, and the US has displaced a lot of imports, and these displaced barrels are being offered at fire sale prices. I said, in answer to my question, who kneecapped oil, the answer is President Obama and his administration. In fact, as long ago as 2011, Thomas Donilon, who was then a national security advisor, was signaling this, and very clearly. He said in 2011, America's new energy posture allows us to engage from a position of greater strength. Increasing US energy supplies act as a cushion that helps reduce our vulnerability to global supply disruptions and price shocks. It also affords us a stronger hand in pursuing and implementing our international security goals. You bet it does. And I said the US administration has turned into a price slasher, and like in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, oil has been sliced up real good. And I said it is the US, this is last year, that is the new price setter for the oil markets, and this is a deep and important geopolitical development. The new price levels will have immediate and enormous geopolitical and financial knock-on effects. It will place intolerable pressure on oil producers, and particularly those operating from a higher base price. It is not difficult to calculate who are the biggest losers in this new price normal. Vladimir Putin's Russia springs to mind first, I said. Gold, 1282 area when I checked last, looks toppy to me. Moving to Africa, Lagarde says African nations should consider oil subsidy cut. Almost 60% drop in oil prices since June has forced policymakers in Nigeria to devalue the currency, raise interest rates to a record, and consider shaving the 2015 budget by 8%. President Goodluck Jonathan seeking re-election on February the 14th. He's avoided further cutting fuel subsidies that cost as much as $7 billion a year, after an attempt to do so in 2012 sparked protests. Interesting point she's making. Of course, the IMF last week lowered its 2015 economic growth outlook for sub-Saharan Africa to 4.9% from the previous estimate of 5.8%. In October, citing shocks to oil-producing economies from falling prices, they slashed Nigerian GDP to 4.8% from 7.3% previously. She also announced that a precautionary credit line for Kenya will probably be concluded by next month. Put up at the link for her at Mindspeak, where she was a phenomenal guest. Money Academy tweeted some very good graphs, which I'm going to incorporate into my presentation on Saturday. But one of them was the shilling against other African currencies. And this goes back to the point when I kept calling the shilling the Teflon shilling. Look at that performance of the shilling. Africa CEO Forum tweeted, check out the latest Africa CEO Forum infographic. What to watch for Africa in 2015. It's informative. South African all share bounced 0.97% yesterday. It's up now 2.95% year to date. And I said on the weekend, the South Johannesburg had a very good run last week, which has followed through into this week. And it is expected that some of Draghi's free money will flow into South Africa. On that note, I'll put up a photograph of Johannesburg sunset that I took 299 days ago. Dollar rand 1160.08, still going to 12. Egyptian pound, which has been sliding of late, 747.10. The stock market, of course, up 10.54% and breathing down the neck of 10,000 on the EGX30. Nigerian all share the worst performing stock exchange index in the world this year, down 13.7%. On the 26th of Jan, I called the central banks. I said the country's central bank has a finger in the dike strategy with the Naira, and there is a tsunami coming, I said, which it is. Ghana Stock Exchange down 4.17% year to date. Ghana Central Bank is making some bullish noises about the cedi, saying the cedi will be much more stable this year after slumping 31% against the dollar in 2014, saying it will be supported by robust interventions. The bottom line is they've got to do a deal with the IMF. When that happens, the cedi bounces. Afren PLC has lost about 96% of its value this year. It dropped 69% yesterday to 5 English pence, the lowest on record. Thomas Martin said they're fighting for survival at the moment. I wrote about this when I said dwindling oil fortunes not good for Kenya. Afren is part of the collateral damage. Madagascar could lose battle against locusts if funds don't come, the UN warns. And I found this tremendous photograph of locusts in Madagascar, which I'll put up. Ethiopia expects to open a new railway line linking Addis Ababa with the Red Sea port of Djibouti in early 2016. And the capital, a new $475 million light railway system will be tested in the next few weeks before scheduled services start. It will be the first city metro to operate in sub-Saharan Africa. Talking about the railway line to Djibouti, saying it can currently take days transporting goods there. The new railway line will cut the journey time to about 8 hours. It will be a game changer for us, said Getachew. Stanbic Bank Uganda has signed an $85 million 18-month loan to fund its general business activities, the first time it has borrowed from international loan markets, the main arranger of the facility said on Wednesday, which is an interesting development. It's paying $250 over LIBOR, which I'm sure they can lend for a good tidy sum. The loan was originally targeting $75 million, but was increased due to interest from banks wanting to back the deal. The list of participant banks includes Al Ali Bank, Kuwait Al Khaliji Commercial Bank of Qatar, and Standard Chartered. So that's interesting. Money Academy again tweeted the Euro Kenya shilling exchange rate, and I asked him to tweet that because 30% of our Kenya's exports go to Europe, and I don't think many people have factored in what is a tremendous collapse in the value of the euro. US exports to East Africa's largest economy, that being Kenya, rose to $1.5 billion from $594.5 million the previous year. The growth was the highest among America's top 10 trading partners in Africa, and Kenya Airways essentially was responsible for a great deal of this. I'll put up a photograph of one of the aeroplanes that they bought from Boeing 451 days ago. And I'll also put up a link for the only known female pilot of the Dreamliner, Miss Koki, Captain Koki Mutungi of Kenya Airways. Kenya Airways, of course, has ranked 24.13% higher so far this year as it plays catch-up with the worldwide rally in airline stocks. Kenya shilling 91.753, holding below 92. Nairobi All Share up 1.84% year to date. M&A activity is pretty much done in East Africa, says Old Mutual. They're saying this is after the acquisition of a majority stake in UAP. They're saying insurance penetration in Kenya, which is the largest and most advanced East African market, is low at 3.16% of GDP. Gross written premiums are predicted to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 18% through 2020. Safaricom is up 0.7117% year to date. The closing price was 14.15. My target for the year end is 20. And the share price data, the previous earnings numbers are all there if you want to have a look. EABL is plus 1.948% year to date. It's at 314. My price target here is 400. And I think you've got to get onto it ahead of the earnings release in February. KCB up 2.6315% year to date. Minimum price target is 80 in 2015. Mumia Sugar, best performing share of the stock exchange, up 48.71% in 2015. NIC Bank, that's up 13.91% year to date. Uchumi up 29.35% as it recovers from a steeply oversold position during the time of the rights issue. We've had a strong rebound since then. And there's a link if you want to check into any share price listed at the Securities Exchange. Please do. I took a photograph of the highway as I drove into work this morning at 6:30 a.m. and it's getting so packed I'm having to leave earlier and earlier. I'll put up that photograph. Bill Gates says there are more mobile money accounts than adults in Kenya. Here's why that's a good thing. McKinsey & Co. has launched the search for its Nairobi point man, charged with scouting for advisory deals in the East African region. The Nairobi All Share edged up marginally yesterday. NSE 20 edged lower marginally. Heaviest trading session of the year. Obviously, it's been good alpha, low beta move so far this year. Nothing like Egypt, of course, but then when you compare it to somewhere like Nigeria, and I think what's happening in Nigeria is displacing money that's coming here. Limuruti rallied by the daily maximum. It's up 31.9% year to date. That's all a real estate play. Safaricom, as I said, plus 0.7117%, bottom of the trading range, lots of buy-side support just here. Uchumi rallied 2.36%. It's now up 29.35% year to date. Kenya Airways ticked a little bit lower, profit taking after a 24% rally year to date. KCB I'm bullish about, as I said. Standard Chartered I like, edged up 0.29%. I think it's inevitable that they look to split the shares this year. That will be conducive. Look at this, Kettle Cobil is up 9.77% this year. Total is up 10.41% this year. And I think both rallies are informed by the view that the ERC Kenya has been slow to transmit the fall in the price of fuel, and therefore the operators might well have made some super normal returns lately. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I'm grateful.